Make some noise.
Oh, woo!
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Welcome back, Mere Mortalized, to another edition of Mere Mortals Meanderings. It has been a while. It has very much been a while. You've got Juan here over in Australia.
Kyrin on the other side. Back in Brazil now, as of 3 hours ago.
Unbelievable. So look, Meanderings is just a chance for us to connect, to have a chat, to talk about what's been going on. There has been plenty of things that's been going on both ends. We were just talking about this before we kind of started off officially around all the many things that have been happening in our lives at the moment, all very varied. But look, Kyrin, I think we've got to kick it off with you, man. I think you need to tell us a little bit of where the hell you've been the last couple of weeks, maybe any call out, any standout things that have been happening.
Yeah, sure. So I titled this "Making the Most of Chaos" because I think we've had both a rather chaotic time of the last 3 weeks, and so we'll try and put some learnings to that as well, perhaps. So for those who don't know, I basically went from here in Brazil. I flew into Nashville, Alabama, and that's where you probably caught up to me right after I'd been in LA for a week. So since then, I spent a week in LA, which you heard about. Then I spent another week in LA, in downtown LA, before flying into Canada, staying in Toronto and that area for a bit, and then having flight delays, cancellations, change of plans. And so I arrived back in Brazil a week later than I expected. So there was certainly a lot of chaos going on over there. I'll talk about the chaos bit and the making the most of it. So I can see I've learned a couple of things. So one thing I learned from VeeCon is there is a serendipity to being in a place where a lot of things are happening. So, my VeeCon experience was very different from yours, Juan. You went there and this was hype of 2022. So there was just ridiculous sums of money going around for NFTs, JPEGs on the blockchain. There was a feeling in the air. This was the first VeeCon, so the first conference organized by Gary Vee. And I remember from that experience, you were like, the after parties, that's the place where it's at. You were running around a lot, trying to see all these speakers and things like this. Mine was very different. Mine was basically, okay, I'm here to hang out with Cole McCormick. So I did get to meet up with Cole, which was really fun. And the speakers were all kind of influencer related. There was only one that was related to NFTs, I'm pretty sure, and blockchain stuff. Everyone else, it was like flavor. Like, do you know who Flavor Flav is, Juan?
I know only purely because of the marketing material that VeeCon put together.
Okay.
And besides that, maybe I've heard of his name once or twice.
Yeah. So I'd heard of him before. I just knew him as the dude who wore a clock around his neck as bling. And this dude rocks up on the stage after I'd listened to will.i.am, who was pretty cool. will.i.am's he's much more entrepreneurial than I thought. I just labeled him as a musician, but man, that dude has his fingers in all sorts of pies and doing all sorts of things. And then Flavor Flav comes on the stage, and the first thing he yells out is like, "America!" And then is like talking about the Olympics, and it took me all of 5 seconds to go, I'm not staying for this, and I walked out. And so I was hanging outside, and I'm just like, oh, all right, I'll go to this, like, I want to stay in the air condition because it's getting pretty hot. And so I went up to this little, I guess it was not a museum, but it was kind of a walkthrough, a showcase, where it just had all of this paraphernalia of VeeFriend stuff. Had some hats, had some cards there. There was, one random security guard. It was a tiny little area. It was, I don't know, 5 meters by 5 meters, roughly, something like that. And it was just me up there. And then just out of nowhere, these people I'd met 2 days prior, and when I say I met, I shook hands with them and said, hey, I just appeared out of nowhere. And then I started chatting with them, and there was this one girl there especially who was like, oh, she's really cool. I'm having really fun meeting her. We all went out to lunch together. We hung around together for, a good 3 or 4 hours after that. And, it's the serendipity in that I wasn't looking for contacts. I wasn't looking to spread the podcast at all. I was there pretty much just to hang out with Cole, and he was arriving later that day. But there was this kind of unique connection attraction where I would have been bored out of my mind, and then I met some people and had a really fun blast of a time with them afterwards, and potentially might even meet some of them in Japan sometime next year. There was a bit of talk of that. So that was where I was like, okay, I can kind of see why the chaos of just having so many things going on all in the same place, all sorts of different people, you can repulse the ones who aren't in your style. For example, on that same day, a little bit earlier, I was chatting with another girl, and she was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I mentioned, I used to work in the mining industry, and she's like, "Oh, that's not very sustainable." So I'm already like, okay, she's maybe a little bit of a eco hippie or a peace lover or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I asked what she does, and she's like, "Oh, I do this and that. I've got some hustles." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Like big hustles, small hustles?" And she's like, "Yeah, just hustles." Very vague. Already spiking up my bullshit meters. And then,
yeah,
and then
they're not being direct about what's actually happening.
Yeah, she hit me with a doozy of a question, which was. So and this was the conversation was I'm trying to keep it alive, but I'm already going, all right, this is a struggle street. And she asked me, so how do you make a lot of money really fast, sustainably and ethically? And I'm just like, what kind of question is that? And it was really out of left field. And my first reaction's like, well, it depends what you mean by ethical. And she just looks at me as if I was
gonna say, did she enjoy that answer?
No, she looked at me as if the ethical part was the least interesting thing, and the making a lot of money fast was, I think, what she really wanted to know.
Was the primary objective.
Yeah, so you can meet obviously people who don't vibe with you, but then there are others who there is something in that chaos, that mixing pot of having a lot of people all together in the same place, where I can see now, oh yeah, this is why Silicon Valley got extremely rich, because you've got a whole bunch of people who are all sort of doing the same sort of thing, and there's a kind of attraction impulse. So I guess my question to you was, out of all the people you met at VeeCon in 2022, have you kept in contact with any of them? Did you find anyone there who you're like, all right, this is a really cool person, and I'm glad I came, not just to meet them, but I'm glad I met them at this thing?
That's a good question. The folks who we went over at that time in Australia, I guess in part there's been some connection, but not like a deep connection. Not one where we're like pursuing the conversation at any one time. But if I was to ever see them again, then like you would have a conversation. But anyone exclusively over there, not really. There was actually, I think there was only one guy that I met over there that we connected prior to as well. It was to do with something. I can't remember, because it was the hype horse that I had, and he was part of a community. He's like, "Oh, we should catch up and talk." And we tried to connect while we were over there, and we just didn't see each other. But besides that, honestly, if I look back at it now, there's no one really that I've kept in contact from VeeCon that I would have said like, "Oh, I really want to keep in contact." Now, part of that as well is, I've transitioned to probably a slightly different stage of life, in that I'm not pursuing just random conversations and random communications with people around the world, all as like exclusively, I guess I would say. But yeah, maybe it was, and you kind of called it out, it was really fun and great in the intensity of the moment, but a couple of years on, yeah, there's no real lasting connections beyond that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, look, there's not always great things that come out that come from, I guess, the chaos of lots of things going on at the same time as well. But I think there is something about, if you are in a situation which is rather chaotic, leaving yourself open to the idea of changing quickly so you can take advantage of it. So to highlight this, on Saturday, last Saturday, I was meant to be flying back to Brazil, and there was thunderstorms, lightning in the Toronto airport. So I got screwed around a whole bunch of times, ended up staying there for like 8 hours in the airport, and they lost my bag. So I'm going like, oh crap. And there was question of whether my bag was still in the actual airport or if it'd been sent on to Newark, New York. So I'm just going like, God, this is what an absolute shit show. And I had, they rebooked me for the next day, and I called up again and I said, look, I don't think you're going to get my bag back to me by tomorrow. Can we like just book this for another time? And the guy's like, yeah, sure, we can do this thing. All right, how about this flight, leaves at 4 a.m. You do jump here. It was as equally bad as my first initial plan to go back to Brazil, which was 4 flights, but with the added benefit of it being super early in the morning, so just wrecking me. And I'm just going like, oh, yeah, no, could you just have like a little more of a check? Is there anything more direct or anything? And then the guy spends another little bit of time and it's like, oh, yeah, there's this one. It's, oh, yeah, cool. It's direct flight from Toronto to Sao Paulo, and then just another flight 2 hours later to Londrina. And I'm going like, yes, please book that. And
why does that not come up as his default name?
I have no idea, man. I have no idea. And I was asking him initially for that. And so I went, yes, please book that. And that was for about a week later. So it gave me just an extra week in Canada. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe I should just go to Montreal. Why not? There's a train leaving. I didn't want to deal with airports anymore. Couldn't hack it.
I was literally gonna ask you how you were feeling so far with the amount of travel and airports and moving around.
I was getting a bit old. I was getting a bit over it. So the train was certainly more appealing to me, cheaper as well, and probably about the same time overall. It took 5 hours to get there. It's only a half-hour flight, I think, but you're going to be dicking around in the airport for an hour and a half either side of that. So that's getting towards 3.5 hours just there. And so, yeah, I took advantage of that. Went to Montreal. Wasn't actually that amazing. The city, it was okay. I probably actually preferred Toronto, to be honest. And this is another one of those times where it was like, it's good just to keep an open mind, so you can take advantage of that. Instead of just seeing a tiny little bit of Canada, I got to see, the second biggest city as well. So second or third biggest, can't remember. So yeah, just something about that. How about you? You've had a chaotic time. Do you want to fill people in with just what's been going on with you this last 3 weeks?
Yeah. Oh man, how would I even describe it? I guess. So, and I guess I was saying to you a little bit earlier as well, right? It's just maybe more, I guess, the intensity of a lot of activities and things that have been happening. I guess in the end, what it's resulted in, I probably won't go into a lot of detail on a lot of things, but it's been a case of lots of like reactive things that have been happening, as opposed to me being able to truly plan out a lot of things. And so in that end, there's been less of an opportunity, let's just say, of sleeping, of eating correctly, of doing the things that you might think I'd be able to plan. I think currently the only real things through the day-to-day that I've been able to keep in some consistency, and this is usual for me, is training, because training still been able to sort of get to it. But, the usualness of, I'd say like I'll be able to get up at 4:15 or 4:30. Nah, that's had to change back to 3:30, 3:45 to be able to get out a few things that have been going on. So yeah, chaotic. I guess chaotic would have to have a baseline of what isn't chaotic, and previously before it was already a pretty busy time or a pretty intense time. but the last couple of weeks have just notched that up in a couple of levels. So yeah, it's been trying to keep priorities the priority. So one of the things you probably have seen, and definitely I've found myself in this, is with a lot of things with the podcast, or even the adjacent things like reading books or being able to put together a solo episode and stuff like that. There was just no discernible time available to me to be able to do that. And yeah, sometimes we find that in life, to be honest. And that's been okay. It's actually been kind of nice to not be, I guess, pushing towards another like vector of life there and being okay with it being paused for a little bit. Although, and it must be said, it also makes me feel a little bit like hungry of like, I did want to talk about this, or I did want to finish this book and then do a book review and begin another new book. But yeah, that's just how life works sometimes.
Oh, I feel you, man. I've trained once in the last 2 weeks, I think. Apart from yesterday, I can't remember having a day where I ate more than one vegetable. I was eating like croissants, quiche Lorraine, random Mexican food in LA, nuts. I had a whole bunch of nuts, which I just packed my bag full because I knew I was just not going to be able to access normal foods my eating and training has just been all over the shop. Definitely not good. Definitely not good all over the shop. And
yeah, well, I was going to say with eating, and it kind of sounds similar to yours. Yeah, mine's just been more, I wouldn't go all the way to the point of like surviving type food, but it's just been whatever is easiest and most available in front of me, that is what will be eaten. Because similarly, vegetables, like fruits, that sort of thing, it's just been not forgotten, but it's just like, that's not what comes easily at the moment.
I'll relate this story to you of the, it's certainly not the grossest, but easily the weirdest desserts I've ever had that weren't Asian in nature. So as I like to do when I go to a new country, I like to find out what's this specialty foods that I can eat here. I do like trying different foods. So, in Canada, they're renowned for having croissants. There's this thing called beaver tails, which are kind of like a flat donut with cinnamon and sugar on them. It's like it's called a beaver tail. Don't ask two more. I think there was a thing called like tortillere, which is kind of like a meat pie. Imagine an Aussie meat pie, but less gravy. It's got more of a mince to it. Butter tarts, all these, just kind of, it's like French style or French influenced. And I went to this bakery in Montreal, and I'm like, I was a little bit desperate with this one because I got back late because I'd been walking around all day, and I'm like, what's just the nearest bakery near me? And I would have preferred to research and go to a better one, but it was like, all right, I just got to go to this one. And I had good reviews on Google, so I'm like, all right, sweet, this one's only four blocks away. I'll go down to it. And I get there in the kind of like afternoon, evening, and they're already starting to slow down a little bit. So they've only got a couple of things left. And there was like a lemon meringue tart. And I'm like, lemon's not my favorite. What else they got here? Oh, they got macaroons. Okay, sweet. I'll get some macaroons. And they also had an ice cream there. So I'm like, sweet, give me the ice cream. And the guy said something. He's like, it's pear and ja. And I'm like, all right, yeah, pear. Pear's, there's a bit of a random flavor, but okay. And it was one of the ones where it's kind of the swirls go together. So it's like, it looks like a McDonald's ice cream where it's half and half, half chocolate, half vanilla or something like that.
Oh, yes. Yep.
And I'm trying it out. I'm like, oh yeah, the pear, it's pear ice cream. I don't think I'd ever had it before. It was okay. Pear's probably not my favorite flavor, but it's not my worst either. And then the other one was like brown ice matcha tea or some shit like that. And dude, it was terrible. It tasted like crap. I'm eating this thing. I'm like, god damn it, or whatever. I'll just get through this. At least I've got some macaroons afterwards. And the macaroons, man. So there were 6 of them in there. Two of them were the same. And then there was 4 different other flavors. The first one I tried, which was the one which was the same, it had black sesame seeds on it, I'm going, okay, there's going to be a bit of a different flavor if it's got sesame seeds on the macaroon. And I would describe the taste of that as lightly burnt hamburger bun. That's what that macaroon tasted like. Not a great start. It's not exactly what I want from a sweet thing.
Not what you'd expect from a macaroon for sure.
Yeah. The other 4 flavors that I wrote down here, and I think I ate them in this order. The next one was slightly off pineapple. You know, like pineapple that's probably been in the sun a bit too long. I had cardboard or something that tasted very similar to nothing, but with a taste of... There was this drink that we had in Japan, Strong Zero, and the lemon ones are pretty good. But there was one which had this kind of maroon, I believe maroon packaging or a reddish type packaging. And what was it called? Was it just called natural or like flavorless or something like that?
I think it was natural.
Yeah, and it was almost undrinkable. It was just like drinking the worst parts of drinking alcohol without any flavoring related to it. It's like you're just tasting alcohol at its essence. It was horrendous. That's basically what this macaroon tasted like. And then the final 2 flavors to top it off were soap and potato.
Oh,
it was
yuck, man! What the hell?
Feral. But it was like, you know, the macaroon itself. The texture was really nice, and there was sugar in there. There was a sweetness to it, but it just had. I get the feeling it was a type of bakery where they're trying to make themselves unique and stand out, so they do weirdish flavors. And I
gotta hate that.
Not a fan.
Just keep it clean, man. Keep it standard.
Oh geez, yeah. So
like that's one of the things, right? When it comes to food, I have a strong feeling. I mean, there's other things too, but you know, if you do something well, like if you do a chocolate well, or a vanilla well, or a caramel well, and you do it good, that's enough. I don't need to see, you know, triple decadent beaver tail fucking matcha tea combination mix up. Like, it's fine, man. You don't need that. You don't need the extra. I feel like that's like a short term game. You know, you bring someone in because they've got all these fancy different type of flavors, but in the end, you're gonna keep coming back to stuff that's gonna be good tasting.
That's why you find
dependable stuff.
Mint choc chip in every ice creamery, and you know, boysenberry or chocolate, obviously. So yeah, I agree that it was the type of place where I went. People would probably come here for a once off, and then probably not again. I can't.
Never again.
Yeah.
Well, mate, you're eating cardboard macaroons. You know, probably not going to be a delectable treat to come back to.
No. But I had a good mixture of tastes across Canada, and one thing I'll say about America is they do great donuts. They do fantastic donuts, or at least I found one place which did fantastic donuts. And the lady who was serving me, she gave me an extra little donut in a couple of my packages, so I was very happy with that place. Expensive though. Everything in the US is expensive. Canada's
very expensive.
Canada's better, but only by a little bit.
Well, I actually just heard from someone who used to live in America. I was talking to her about just that very much thing, like the prices. And she was kind of actually saying, because her family is over here at the moment, and they live in not too far away from Philadelphia. And the cost, so that they were comparing Australian costs to the cost there, where they were saying, wow, Australia is really, really expensive, which I guess in conversion and some other ways it is expensive. But she was relating to the fact that the capital cities in the US are very expensive. But once you get to a little bit more rural, or the townships across America, it is much cheaper. So I wouldn't, maybe.
Yeah, okay. And I got the worst of LA
I haven't
then.
seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Although, like, I saw this in Minnesota, so I've also seen it be relatively expensive in Minnesota. Now, I guess Minnesota isn't a full, like, big city in comparison to New York or LA and that, but I guess it is, a reasonably sized place. So I don't know. I guess I've never been to a rural location enough in the US to kind of be able to claim whether it's actually cheaper, but maybe it's big prices parity.
Yeah, unfortunately, I probably shouldn't talk too much about the US because look, I got 4 days in Tennessee, well 3 days in Tennessee, 1 in Alabama, and then 2 weeks in LA. So it's obviously LA dominant, and the US is too broad a place to be making sweeping generalizations. Like, well, it is going to be expensive. There's no doubt about that compared to Brazil, but how expensive is the and just subverting of expectations as well. I was going there, and I'm like, look, at the very least, it's going to be ridiculous sized portions, and there's going to be tons of junk food. So my sweet tooth is just going to be loving it. And I was pretty disappointed, to be honest. I went through Ralph's, I went through a Whole Foods, and I went through another supermarket. And I got to say, I was rather disappointed with their chocolate selection. Their bakery was probably equivalent to what you'll find in an Australian supermarket, so it's okay, but not like crazy good. I was a bit disappointed with how healthy it was in a way. I was wanting like the big ass, greasy, ridiculous heart attack hamburger sort of shit, and I didn't really get any of it. Maybe I needed to go out of my way more to try and do that.
No, I'm probably glad your body's probably glad you didn't do that, man.
Yeah, and another thing that surprised me was the lack of fast food chains, or if they are, their fast food chains have changed. I saw
in LA. Yeah,
man. I did not see very many McDonald's, very many KFCs, or very many they don't call it Hungry Jacks, Burger Kings, or what I assumed would be those. But I saw things like Chipotle,
In-N-Outs and stuff like that. Yeah, Chipotle.
In-N-Outs were. Someone was talking about them. I didn't actually see it myself. I saw a place. There was a couple of places where it was like a pancake manor type thing, or they specialize in pancakes. I've forgotten the name of it. So there was junk foodie.
Waffle House.
No, it's not Waffle House. Can't remember what it was. There was junk foodie type places, but they weren't the ones I was expecting. Whereas in Canada, man, there was McDonald's everywhere. There was so many of them, and even more of these things called Tim Hortons, which is kind of like a coffee shop with a little mini bakery in it. So a bit of subversion of expectations as well from what I was expecting in the US.
Okay. Let's just touch base quickly on the Boostagram Lounge.
Yeah,
let's just jump in there and then we'll continue on. Because I don't think we called out the one from Dave Jones, did we?
No, we haven't done that one.
Okay. So we'll go into this one again. Boostagram Lounge, we like to just sort of shout out and talk about it in the podcast in terms of people who've been supporting us during obviously what we do here. We'll talk about it a little bit at the end, but yes, you can support us by sending 3 Satoshis with some messages attached to it as well. And I guess the main one that we've had so far, really the only one over the last couple of weeks, is Dave Jones.
Peter's is also new.
Or did we talk about... not talk about Peter. Cool. Well, I'll talk about Peter's first. Yeah. He did Canadians at default apologetic. Sorry. And that's 7,777 sats. Content. Is that correct, Kyrin?
Absolutely.
Apologetic by default.
Absolutely. I liked it. I like the Canadian politeness is definitely a thing. I'll touch upon that in the next little section after the Boostagram Lounge. But yeah, I did notice there is a friendliness, and like you said, it's kind of like an apologetic friendliness. That it's kind of, you meet someone in the lift and it's like, you say hey, but it's more like, oh hey, we're both in this lift together and it's weird. I apologize for that. Whereas if you get in a lift in Australia, it's more likely, well, you might say nothing, but you also could just be like, oh hey, how are you going? There is a tinge of apology in a lot of their interactions. I would agree with that.
Good. So yes, Peter. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's hear about how actually apologetic they are in a moment. And then the one from Dave Jones was a big boy. He says, my brother Kyrin, here's Cattleman's Feast Payback Mega Boost. I can now confirm that a Tim Tam Slam is actually a chocolate biscuit with coffee and not a Vietnamese sex position. Stay safe in LA. That was 100,000 sats and using Cast-O-Matic.
Wowza. Thank you, Dave.
Did he tell you he was going to do that, send you that, or was there any other particular reason he sent through that?
Yeah, he somewhat mentioned it. So basically the context for that was I bought at the Bitcoin event, Adam mentioned on the show, like, there's this thing, the Cattleman's Feast, where it's basically like an all-you-can-eat beef type thing. And we're like, all right, sweet. And I knew it was going to sell out, so I ordered a ticket for Dave and I 4 hours before the event started. What I didn't realize was when you went there, you had to have a Bitcoin ticket to get into the place, which would then allow you to enter into this other place that was within it. And they're like, no, you can't come in here because we didn't have the Bitcoin ticket. So it was a bit shitty that they didn't have that advertised real upfront on their website, because I'm pretty sure they didn't. But in any case, thank you very much, Dave, for paying me back for that. He didn't need to, but it was appreciated.
Yeah, no, so I appreciated that, Dave and Peter, with those 2 big boosts. But yeah, once again, and look, and this is probably partly, to be honest, Kyrin, is the fact that we just have been doing other things, haven't been prioritizing the conversations and a few of the other podcast items that we'll be doing. That's just reality. But you're about to talk about a little bit of, I guess, Canada and some of the other things about apologetic, but just on the side of V4V and stuff like that. Any more insights or any more thoughts that you've had, I guess, over the last couple of weeks in meeting a lot of the people who are the who's who, being to a lot of events for the last couple of weeks or even months, really now? What are your thoughts on it? Has anything changed? Have you got any new insights, any new paths, timelines have changed, anything like that?
Yeah, probably you actually joked about it before we went live, but didn't capture on the recording. So I said here, which was, you were like, I think we need to step away from the Bitcoin and we'll only do it V4V through Solana now and through meme coins on Solana. The only thing that I've slightly changed my tune on is using layer 2 Lightning Bitcoin as the method of transmission. When I was chatting with Peter, he was like, yeah, you know what, I've been in Bitcoin for a little bit, and I wanted to use it. I don't want to just hodl it. And I've met people like that before, and I always sort of had the same opinion, which was like, if you're just holding this stuff forever, it's not going to work. You do need some people to actually use it. So the only thing, and basically the context of this is the whole discussion is it's just using Lightning has been hard, and it was starting to come up against some technical bottlenecks using it that would prevent it from scaling to a much bigger proportion of people. And some of the podcasting apps were having troubles with this because they were using Alby is starting to change some things, and so it won't be as applicable, etc., etc. So I still think the core, I feel my instincts were right in that the thing that blew away my mind was value for value, the concept of that, how it's actually put into practice, whether it uses, I'd really like it for it to use Bitcoin. I think that still makes the most sense. But there could be a solid case for why some sort of tokens which are interchangeable and they are all beneath the surface, and that it won't be Bitcoin. It'll be Ethereum or Solana or something like that. So that's the only thing that's slightly changed, and even then it's just taken me down from like a 99% surety that it'll be Bitcoin to a 92, something like that. So I'm still pretty sure.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm still high. I'm still even a bit higher than that percentage. I just think my timeline's a bit still maybe even more stretched out.
Correct. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. My timeline has gotten way longer than it was 2 years ago.
And even looking at the current Bitcoin prices, for not talk about specifically costings and stuff like that. But when you see it, it's starting to settle into a bit more of a, I hope, like crab-like period where it just stays around that area. And I don't think that would be a bad thing if it kind of just stabilized like that for a while. Because I think in the very nature of an asset moving up and down, right, kind of stops people from leveraging and using it as much as possible. But if it moved, we'll just say if it moved on par, was close to kind of like inflation, right? So it just keeps it pace. And then besides that, it's a little bit more stable. I could see more of a reasonability of spending with it, using it in that manner. So, yeah.
Let's see what happens. Juan's just called a price prediction there. Bitcoin at 90K Australian this time next year.
Honestly, I would not be surprised. It would not be surprising to me if it was up and down with a few squiggles, but in the end, we're at about the same place for a year.
Okay, I think
that's almost my expectation at this point.
I think it'll be 400K this time next year. That's my price prediction.
400K.
We'll see.
Here we go.
We'll see where it
Let's
differs. See who's closer. You know how good we are at predictions.
The off, so don't even, and even though we're giving a pretty varied one, so either it's going to be $0 or $2 million. That's probably how close we are. All right, tell me about the apologetic Canadians, because I don't even think I'd really heard that before.
Okay, yeah, no, there's been well, perhaps not apologetic. Nice is the word. You were talking about Minnesota nice a while ago, and well, Canadian nice is the next level above that. They're very, very, very nice people is what the general trend or stereotype is. But Juan, I'm going to see if I can hold this up to the screen now. And for those who are watching on YouTube, they might be able to see it. I've got a little thing on my finger here, Juan. It's a tiny little piece of metal. I'd say it's about 1/2 millimeter in width and 1.5 millimeters in length. What do you think this thing is that I've got? It's just a tiny little piece of metal.
I would have no idea.
So, Peter fucking shot me, man. He shot me. He made me bleed my own blood. Talk about Canadian niceties. So, we went to a gun range, and he was shot. I'm other than my Brazil shooting at a target in someone's driveway in Miguel's driveway, and doing some clay shooting in New Zealand once upon a time. I haven't really shot guns, not even like BB guns or anything. And so Peter's like, yeah, we're gonna correct that. And so we went to the range, and he knows his way certainly more around guns than I do. And I was kind of hiding behind him. I had my big headphones on, ear muffs to protect your ears, with the foam rollers inside as well, the earplugs, goggles on. And I thought goggles were a bit excessive. I'm like, what's the point of that? And in any case, and he's just demonstrating, and he had a shotgun, and so what they do is, they put the paper targets up on this kind of clamp thing, and then it goes out into the distance, and then you shoot at the paper target. And so he did that, but somehow in his shot, he must have hit the metal bit that holds the paper. And I was standing almost directly beside him, but maybe 30 centimeters to his left, just so I could see him shooting. And then suddenly I just feel this like pinch on my top clavicle almost. It's kind of like in the meaty part of the shoulder and pec where those meet. And I'm like, what the fuck was that?
Sure. Yep.
And then I look down and I'm like, wait, there's a little hole in my shirt here. And then I look at my skin. I'm like, I'm fucking bleeding. What the shit? And yeah, sure enough, I think a ricochet from that had come back basically directly at us and hit me with enough force to actually make me bleed. And I was like,
wow.
I'm like, oh shit. Okay, good thing that didn't hit my eye. Yeah, we just afterwards I was like playing around. I'm like, I think there's still some metal in there. I was trying to dig it out, but I couldn't. So I'm like, I'll just leave it. And then, a week later when the scab had healed, I took the scab off and saw, I've got this tiny little piece of metal. So I'm like, well, I'm gonna keep that. That's a funny little thing.
Now, would you say then
that Peter
Kyrin,
did it
you have been
intentionally?
shot?
Yes.
Well, would the story
Oh
summarize
man,
as, I have been shot?
Yes. So two things I have to say is, one, I was shot in North America, so everyone's going to immediately assume, okay, he means the United States of America, not Canada, and that he got shot as in with a bullet hit him. So that will be my one-liner from now on. Yes, I got shot once in North America. If they ask for more details, I guess I'll have to give them the truth of it. But it's kind of like when I say, oh yeah, I ended up in a jail in Mexico once. I busted that story out a couple of times recently. And the initial reaction is always just like, you have to tell me more about that. So it's a good little party starter for sure. So I will be claiming that, yes.
Wow, there you go. Besides that, and I guess we have to talk about him too. Peter, what was he like in person? Any other comments you like? And I guess for just as a bit of an introductory piece there for anyone who doesn't know, I guess, Peter has been instrumental to, I guess, continuing what we do in a lot of ways through the Valley for Valley model. He's been supporting us for how many years do you reckon at this point now?
3 years. I think that's probably about accurate. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, we had a conversation with him prior to obviously you meeting him in person.
Correct.
Online. We had like an hour-long call with him as well prior to. But how'd you find it just in general catching up with him?
Yeah, well, I'll add this to Cole, meeting Cole in person as well. It was like, easily the best part of my trip has been meeting these people. I guess it's kind of like a king descending down to his vassals. Like, no, I'm joking. It was, man, just, I know Peter values his privacy, so I'm trying to give some stories which won't add extra details, which he hasn't revealed to us through messages before. Incredibly generous with his time. So he works a full-time job. He's got a family, and he took away, 3 days essentially from when I landed. He and I got closer to where he lives in Canada. He took me out to a park for basically like a full day, like 3-hour drive into Algonquin Park. And then we did a massive hike around there. He, fed me when I had that emergency, layover stop in Toronto for extra days. He housed me for extra days, even though he had so much going on. So it was, just incredibly generous with the time and just an awesome guy. It's kind of like Dave Jones. It was just like, I can't believe I got to meet him. It was just absolutely wonderful. And different in the sense of, I know him, I guess, digitally. I know Dave digitally. I know they're different people, and the topics of discussion were similar but different as well. I joke of the nicety and him shooting me, but the the amount of time he spared for me was just amazing. And it was. I once again would say, like, it was worth going all that way just to meet him, just like it was worth going all that way just to meet Dave. Absolutely. All the airport stuff, just gave me extra time to chill out with him. So incredibly humbled to do that. And same with Cole. Cole, he's talked about this on his podcast, so I can reveal this. And part of the hecticness and the chaos that Juan was alluding to was, we've got friends going through traumatic events, both good and bad, I guess. So maybe not traumatic in the sense, but, losing loved ones, gaining new loved ones in the near future. And Cole's father passed away about a week before was going to meet him. And so it was just like, oh shit, well, if we don't meet, man, that's totally understandable. You have to look after your family and be there for them with in that kind of grieving process. And it was really cool meeting him. And then he was saying like, it actually really helped hearing about your mum over this last year and a bit, because my dad was diagnosed with cancer about a year ago, and he lost him just so recently. So it was a kind of deep connection on that portion as well, where it's just like he's taken it really well. He's probably better than I was taking it, to be honest. And it was just like a once in a lifetime kind of event and timing. So it was awesome meeting all these people. Yeah, I'm not doing a great job of explaining it all, but hopefully I managed to convey that in person as well.
Yeah, no, and it's been awesome, man. I mean, part of what you've talked about is you yourself had to come back to Australia to obviously deal with passing of your mother, going back out, and honestly, from the beginning when you get back and you went to go do the handstand retreat, and then everything else as I think has preceded it as well, has sounded like the right journey, man. Like if you had to select of what you could do afterwards, sounds like it's a good mixture of learning, of meeting people, of pursuing different things that sounds to, at least on my side, sounds like it's been the right journey in any case.
Absolutely. There's probably a conclusion I've come to over the last couple of months, which is I'm really glad I didn't meet a girl in the last 3 years, because just dealing with the whole COVID thing, dealing with mum's worsening condition, I'm not sure I would have had much extra emotional energy to really give to be the best version of myself. I'd say I haven't been the best version of myself for a couple of years, and the just like the emotional toll, it's always like this. I struggle understanding, interpreting emotions in the moment. I'm much better at that a little bit after the fact. And I think this last kind of 3 months since mum has passed has just been a good journey to take some time, kind of reconfigure things, have a look at my life, and I'm like, you know what, life's pretty damn good, man. I'm healthy, still young, still got time to meet someone. Finances are in pretty good shape. Friendships are in pretty good shape. I think I can now devote the time to really searching for someone and doing it in a way where I'm not kind of being pulled all over the place and having various priorities of what I think I want to do, how I want my life to look, and things like that. So yeah, it's been a good and so just going forward, I'm going to be here for about a month, and then I will be in late September. I will be in New Zealand, and that's where we're going to spread my mum's ashes. And I think that'll just be like a nice top off to that kind of portion of my life, and get ready for really getting into my 30s, I guess.
It actually genuinely feels like it's the next stage for you. It's kind of like the next stage of life begins at that point, and I think for a lot of people it doesn't seem so markedly crisp and clean cut. But I guess an example with yours there is that it's a very much a new beginning of sorts, and shifting and making what you want to do for the next sort of period, which and I guess that brings kind of a full picture as well to some of the things that have been happening in my life, and actually seeing it in a few other people, is that sometimes transitions or things will happen and you don't necessarily see that a kind of like a shift has happened in the way that you once were before and you are now. I was actually for work drinks on Friday, so 2 days ago, and it was to mark kind of people starting to head off into doing different things, and people starting to roll off from the projects and the work that we're doing, including myself. Mm-hmm. And it was actually interesting, like reflecting back maybe like 10 years ago. 10 years ago would be about right. When I've been working, and you'd go out for some work drinks and stuff, just the the complete difference between what it was then and what it is now, and the priorities and what you're looking to do and what the next few days has versus having lots of drinks and them just being absolutely splayed and roasted for the day after, stuff like that. Sometimes it sneaks up on you and you don't realize it. For others, it's much more clean and crisp, and you know what the distinction is. But those phases of life all exist, and whether we want to acknowledge them or not, I think you have to go through them one way or another.
Yeah, which doesn't mean to say you can't do those things as well. Peter's a big fan of whiskey, and so he had the Gentlemen's Whiskey Club meeting, which I was invited to, and man, he's got a lot of whiskey, and he's trying to make his way through it with his friends, and I barely helped out. I had like 2 sips, and was then drinking other things. But that's not to say you can't get together and have even what is a relatively big night, but it's just the way you approach it, the way what you'll find interesting as well. It's like it's much less interesting to be out in a noisy environment and having Gentlemen's Whiskey Club there versus doing it in the comfort of your own home, where you can joke around with people, say the ridiculous jokes and things that might get you cancelled if you were to say it elsewhere in a work environment, for example. So yeah, it was it's good to like reflect back, and it's not necessarily the drinking that's the thing that's changed. It's, I guess, like how you want to go about doing it, what sort of environment, what sort of conversations do you want to have with people as well. It's that has certainly changed a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I'm just trying to see if I've got any other notes here that I quickly wrote down. The only other thing that was kind of cool, Toronto, I was actually, in terms of big cities, wasn't too bad. I got a real Australia type vibe from it. It kind of felt like Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne all mixed together. Now, obviously, I'm here in the summer, so it would be completely different during winter, where it's just covered with snow. But yeah, walking around there, I was like, yeah, you know what? I could see myself, if I had to, Australia gets bombed out and I'm like, I got to go somewhere, I would probably spend 4 months of the year maybe in Toronto. But then again, it's like, what appealed to me about it was just once again, the kind of serendipity. Just walking, I was there for one night in the city center proper, and on that night, I randomly came across. If you think your run club is big one, this one that I came across, I reckon it was 400 people. Man, it was huge. There was so many people here. Yeah, I came across a run club. I came across a salsa night. Came across just people doing cool things. There was some people doing like slacklining and stuff. And this is just random walking around the city. I wasn't even like properly researching places to go. So I guess that's one of the good things about big cities.
Like you weren't seeking it out, basically.
There is always something going on if you were looking for that, and especially if you're looking to socialize and meet someone. That was the kind of thing where I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see why this could be a nice place to go. And even I went to a calisthenic park yesterday just before I left, and came across a girl there doing handstands, and I was like, oh, she's actually cool. She's the type of person I'd want to meet. So there is something about the kind of the big city like that. And then the last thing was, I have added to my collection of cool animals that I've saw. So I saw a fox, a deer, squirrels, and rabbits. I saw a beaver dam, but no beavers in it, unfortunately.
That would have been pretty cool if you saw a couple of beavers.
And yesterday evening, we were talking. I was still just relaying to Peter. I'm like, oh yeah, all I'm really missing is a skunk, a raccoon, and a moose. And he's like, well, you're not going to see a moose. There are raccoons around here during the night. We might walk back and see one. And as we were walking across the grass, he's like, oh, I think that's one. Oh no, it's a rabbit. And then we looked closer, and no, it was a skunk. And so it was probably about 20 meters away from us. And I'm like, oh, can I get a bit closer? And he's like, I wouldn't. If you, because I thought like, oh, skunks can maybe shoot their spray, what, a meter or two or something. And he's like, nah, it's a bit further than that. And once that stuff gets on you, even you have to use a special chemical to get it off, and even then, it'll still probably smell for 3 days, and they probably won't let you on your flight. So I went, no, I don't feel like dicking around with,
I'll stay away
more
from
airports. Yeah. So I have seen a skunk now as well. So added to my and like a cardinal, a red cardinal. That was pretty cool as well. So yeah, it's even just wildlife, man. Squirrels are fun. They're really fun to look at for a non-native. Just the way they move and run around, and dogs chasing them and stuff. I wanted to chase them.
Did you see many of them in LA?
In LA, there was a couple floating around. I saw more in Alabama with Dave in Birmingham. There was one or two. I saw one on the Venice Beach area. There would be there's not enough trees, honestly, in LA. There wasn't that much. Where I was at in Venice Beach in downtown, I saw a rat in LA, big fat chunky one. But other than that,
should have chased that one down.
Yeah, man, that thing would beat me up. I think like it looked like it was hardened on the hardened streets of LA.
Damn. Yeah, no, I saw a lot of squirrels on the way up to Hollywood sign.
Oh yeah, I never actually got.
I never other places.
I never got to Hollywood. I was going to do it as there was a guy Ren, who was part of the V Friends community, and he was doing a tour, and I did tour a little bit with him. I got to see a Dodgers game. That was pretty cool as well. And when he was doing his tour, it was always like, oh, I'll join a little bit later. Oh, I've already been to Santa Monica, so I don't need to do that portion. Oh, they're at the Getty now. Oh, they're at this. And I just kept on pushing it off and never ended up getting to it because I was doing other things with other people. So it was I don't know. Did I miss anything by not seeing Hollywood, man? What do you reckon?
Not really. Look, honestly, in amongst everything that you've been traveling and seeing, probably not.
I could have been discovered.
The final thing I wanted to check. God, true. Could have if you did a couple of handstands over there, they'd probably think you're homeless. I was going to say the last thing I wanted to check with you was, what was it like meeting Gary Vee again?
Yeah, that was pretty. Once again, the serendipity. You know, Cole and I had just walked out after a thing, and then we walked to this area where no one was really at. But this lady passed us, and she's like, "Gary's over there," and then told it just to us and no one else. We're like, okay, well, we don't see him, but all right, we're walking this direction anyway. And yeah, Cole was there, and he was the one. I think it was actually a special moment for him because he got to, chat with him for about a minute, just tell him his story about his father, and and then I was just kind of hanging in the background, just as I tend to do, and then Cole drags me over, and he's like, "This is the guy, this is Kyrin. He's the one who invited me." So it was it was cool. It was cool meeting him. He's just a guy. He hasn't had a tremendous impact on my life in the sense of motivational speaking or inspiring me to really do things. So there's nothing that I really want or need to say to him. But I was there, I guess, to help participate in the VeeCon. So it was cool to just meet him again. And yeah, he's a cool guy. It's in terms of being rich and famous, he seems pretty genuine as far as I can tell from my brief meetings with him.
No, that's cool, man. Yeah, and it's almost nice, honestly, to have more of that mentality with everyone, not just, even if you have people who you particularly look up to or have changed your life in some way or something like that. I think if you could still address them as a normal human, the better, honestly, the better it's gonna be.
Sure, man, sure. All right, yeah, I think we'll leave it there for today, Juan. There's a Value for Value podcast, everyone. We have been slightly lacking in our value because, obviously, with all the stuff going on, it has been harder to get together. I do anticipate that, at least for myself, I will be free and available for the next 2 weekends. And then after that, we'll have to see, because once again, I think I'm flying on a Saturday, so terrible timing in terms of the podcast. Actually, maybe I can do that Sunday. We'll have to see. But anyway, there's a Value for Value podcast. Everyone, we put all this value up front. For you, you can consume it at your leisure, anytime, any place, anywhere, anyhow. And we just ask that you send some value back. So sharing this podcast with a friend, if they've had any observations of LA, of cool animals, of being shot, we would love to hear those stories as well. So sending us a message via any of the social media links, which you can find down in the show notes. And then finally, if you want to help support us financially, if you go to meremortalspodcast.com/support, you can see a list there, and you'll see Peter is well on the top of that list in terms of support, as well as Dave. So they're both just adding to their superiority there. But I've also got some links of podcasting apps where you can send us a Boostagram directly within the app to help support us, and then attach a message to that at the same time, which we read out every week, or when we appear live.
When we appear. But yeah, no, look. I think it's going to be...
I think another, let's just say...
next couple of weeks.
Yeah, like 2 months of getting back on our feet, a month and a half probably, until we're both back in Brisbane, and then we can probably devote a bit more time and effort to the podcast again, and perhaps a bit more direction to our conversations as well.
Yeah, there's also like some interviews and stuff like that I've got or started to line up, right? But cool. You can't see it right now, but if you could see the state of the room that I'm in, it is just chaotic. It's like there's no way I could even like set up it for a conversation just at the moment. There's a lot of cleanup, a lot of other priorities that have been happening at the moment. But what we can promise you is that the next 2 months, we'll have not exactly a clear path of how to look like, but we'll still be sticking around and showing up and doing the things that we do. And then over time, that'll start becoming a little bit more directed as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you very much for everyone tuning in live as per usual. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're well. For now, Juan out.
Kyrin out. Bye.
Good.